What's up guys, my name is Ace, and yesterday we got the big news that they brought the open playlist to Black Ops 7 with reduced SBMM, and when covering that I shared some of my really early impressions after playing a small handful of matches, and what I said there was, generally speaking, it still felt pretty sweaty, like pretty difficult with the matches overall, but much looser than my experience before that, and much more enjoyable as well, despite the fact that lobbies were still pretty difficult. However, now I wanted to share my updated thoughts on this, as well as my new biggest fear for Black Ops 7 going forward, because I've been playing the game pretty much all morning now in this open playlist, and having an absolute blast. This is by far the most fun I've had playing Call of Duty, as a solo player at least, in I don't even know how long. It's been so many years since I've had an experience like this. And I actually almost forgot to record today's video because I was just so into the game. I just wanted to keep playing over and over. I had to take a break away from it so I could come record this video. And that's not something I normally feel with Call of Duty. Normally with Call of Duty in recent years, it's kind of been content first and like I'm playing so I can get the content with a hopeful side effect that I'll have some fun along the way. But this morning I've been having so much fun I lost track of time. And the crazy thing is, it's not like I'm even dominating matches. Sure, I've had some good games where I'm actually putting up some high streaks. And of course, you're going to be seeing those better games where I was really doing well. But that's not representative of every game that I'm playing in this playlist by any means. I've had plenty of games where my team's getting stomped on and high streaks are coming in on the other end. And in this playlist, I don't really mind. Obviously, I would prefer to be playing well, but when I get beat up like that, I know that it was largely organic getting into that match. I don't feel like it's the matchmaking system punishing me because I played too well in the previous match. It's just every time I load up, I never know what I'm gonna get. Might be an easy game, might be a tough game, might be somewhere in the middle where it's just a nice back and forth competitive game. And that's such a refreshing feeling, and it makes taking those L's that much easier. Like, I've just been sticking through those games, even the ones we're getting beat up on. I stick through most of those now because I don't feel like an algorithm decided that that was going to happen to me, and instead it was just something that happened to happen. Additionally, the matchmaking times have been ridiculously fast. I haven't experienced matchmaking times like this in Call of Duty since before Modern Warfare 2019. Like, I'm hitting the button to search and often finding games within 5 seconds. That's completely unheard of for me on my account. Usually it takes about 40 plus seconds for me to find a match in Call of Duty. And that's roughly where it was at before this open playlist came, but with the open playlist, it's practically instant. And anecdotally, I don't have the data on this. I haven't been calculating my ping values every single game, but anecdotally, I'm seeing fewer high ping connections than I was before this open playlist. Like, I'm not going to pretend I wasn't getting good ping matches before this, but I was also getting a lot of higher ping matches sprinkled in there. Whereas with this open playlist, it seems to be much more consistent with those lower ping games. And it's been very, very rare that I've been getting anything higher than like a 50 ping, for instance, which is quite good for me because in recent years, my ping jumps all over the place from one game to the next. One game, it'll be 20 milliseconds. The next, it'll be 70. Next one after that, it's 90, and then back down to 20. Like, it's kind of all over the map. But in this playlist, it's been much more steady and consistent overall, with the odd match still mixed in there where the ping spikes a bit. So my general experience with the beta immediately flipped around now that we have this open playlist compared to what I was experiencing before. Before this, I was having a generally negative experience with the game, and I talked about that in yesterday's first video, which was recorded before this open playlist was added. And in that video, I was essentially saying, like, I think I'm transitioning to Battlefield this year. Like, Call of Duty is going to take a back seat because I'm not really having fun, despite the fact that I think the gameplay design is actually quite good in this game, or at least it suits me really well. The matchmaking was just unbearable. It was exhausting to play, and I've completely changed my tune on that with the open playlist. Now, this is where the topic of this video really comes in. My big fear with Black Ops 7 is that this is going to end up being the best time that I have with this game, period. Like, for me, it's just going to be all downhill from here, because I feel like the way they've handled things in past years, at least, has conditioned me to think fairly pessimistically about this. And what I picture happening here, I hope it doesn't, but what I picture happening here is they're going to be collecting their data with the open versus closed playlists, and it's going to conclude that while this really significantly improves the player retention and the experience of players like myself, it's going to have a generally negative impact for the majority of the player base that are the casuals that have been protected heavily by the matchmaking system in recent years, and they've become accustomed to achieving a certain level of performance in game that they wouldn't be achieving if this system weren't in place to artificially allow that to happen. And so if that's the conclusion they gather from their data, unfortunately, if they're just looking at the data, it makes sense to go with the majority, right? Well, I don't know. Like I've been saying leading up to Black Ops 7, I think a lot of people have reached their breaking point with this modern matchmaking system. They've stuck with it and they've been hanging around largely for a lack of something better to play or just out of habit or addiction to the franchise, despite enjoying the game less and less and less year after year. I think a lot of those players were really reaching a burnout, and now that we have competition in the market, really viable competition with Battlefield, I think maybe they were starting to see that long-term burnout effect hit hard, and therefore maybe this same argument isn't going to be applying like it used to in the past. And maybe they are recognizing that they are going to have to give back to players like myself that are ready to leave if things don't change this time around. So time will have to tell on this and how they handle it. Another big fear I have is not necessarily that they're just going to get rid of this entirely. Another big fear is that they're going to provide us with this open playlist option at launch, but it's just going to be one playlist going up against all of these standard playlists that have the same strict matchmaking system we've seen over the past handful of years. And if they do that, that mode would be doomed to fail right from the beginning, because the vast majority of the player base will just play the standard game modes, and really the only people that are going to be seeking out this mode specifically are the people looking to avoid SBMM, which tend to be the higher skilled players, meaning that higher skilled players will be overrepresented there, and then for those higher skilled players, it's not going to feel that much different than their strict matchmaking experience because of that selection bias. So time's really going to have to tell when it comes to this. I'm curious to see if Treyarch will be sharing the data on this that they collect throughout the beta, and I'm curious to see what they decide to do. But yeah, I think if they announce that that's what their plan is going forward, is to simply provide that open playlist at launch, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be enough for me to really address my issues with how exhausting the experience has been and with how burnt out I've been feeling with Call of Duty because of those systems. And now, after playing with this open playlist, it's very clear that I'm not burnt out with Call of Duty. I'm burnt out with these matchmaking systems. I still love Call of Duty. I still love the experience when it's more organic and varied. And that's another thing as well. I think community sentiment really turned around when they did this overall. I'm seeing a lot of positivity surrounding this within the vocal community that you see online talking about, like I'm talking on Twitter, YouTube, Reddit. It's generally a very positive sentiment, which we haven't been seeing leading up to Black Ops 7. It's been largely negative, and this turned the tables on that. So if they now go back on this, I think that's really going to push those people away because they were given a taste of what it could be like. And in a lot of ways, we feel very validated by this because we see now that it is these systems we've been frustrated with. And it's not just the fact that we're getting old and we're getting burnt out with the franchise in general because we've been playing it for so long. So the ball's in their court here. I'm very curious to see what comes of this. And I think my year of gaming and on YouTube really hinges on what they decide to do at launch when it comes to this matchmaking system. I'm still feeling like I could just as easily go over to Battlefield 6 if they go a route that I'm not happy with, and that's totally fine. Like, if they decide that's what's best for the overall community, I can respect that decision if they're following the data and going with what the majority seem to want based on their data. But I think they need to understand that they're going to lose a lot of us if that happens. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts on this whole situation, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. What has your experience been like with this open playlist? Has it been similar to mine, where you've seen a lot more variety and it feels a lot more organic and you're enjoying yourself more? Or has it been the opposite? Have you been enjoying yourself less while playing the open playlist versus the standard mosh pit, or versus what you were experiencing before the open playlist was added? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.